What about the other stereotypes?
Women are more emotional. We're more understanding. Friendlier. Sensitive. Caring.
But are women really more caring? We hired an 8-year-old actress, fitted her with a secret camera, and abandoned her on a London street. This is what happened next. This test is a measure of empathy, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and to act appropriately.
Hello, darling.
You alright, sweetheart?
Yeah. You're waiting for someone, Pet?
Yeah, my mummy's just gone in Sainsbury's.
How long has she been?
Don't know.
Do you want some company?
Well, I think it was shock to both of us to see a little girl sitting all on her own up against a cement wall.
Yes, and you just wanted to go in and protect her and
that's
make sure that she was okay.
But it was just common sense. When you see a little girl on her own, you don't walk past her.
I saw her twice, actually, going down and coming back up. I thought she was probably waiting for somebody in the hairdresser's act.
I know she actually did have quite a brand new pair of shoes on, so I thought she doesn't look as if she's in a large amount of trouble.
I'm a male on my own, aren't I? And if I'm seen talking to little girls like that, what's the reaction?
Of all the excuses given for doing nothing, concern about being seen as a paedophile seems the most plausible. But note that none of the men alerted the authorities or asked a woman to help on their behalf.
What are you doing there, Poppy?
During the hour we filmed, 41 women stopped to help. Some of them were so concerned that they came back several times. But only 2 men stopped, and one of them was with a woman. 22% of women offered help, as opposed to just 1% of men. But this is just one test, and one way of measuring empathy. Our volunteers are about to try another. Former para Paddy Doyle runs a boxing gym.
If it wasn't for fitness, I'd be in prison. You know, I would be.
Paddy holds 130 world records for fitness and endurance. He is officially the world's fittest athlete.
I've had to be selfish while doing my sport. And it's affected my relationships because women couldn't take that. It was either the world records or them. And unfortunately, I went for the world records.
Like the others, Paddy has filled in a detailed psychological questionnaire designed to measure empathy. Of the 500,000 people who took part in our online survey, over 90% of the top scorers were women. Men were very much in second place.
How do you think your husband would do on this? How do you think his
empathy
scores?
score, you're having a laugh right at bottom. Men have no empathy, no.
OK, well, let's talk to a man to see how he feels about that.
For empathising, I got 12 out of 20.
Oh, are we surprised?
Yes, I am very.
Thought it would have been a bit less. Yeah, so that has surprised me.
In the empathy test, Paddy actually outscored all the other men, and all but 2 of the women.
Paddy's broken the mould and showed that some men can be very empathic. What about you?
Definitely not the case. Apparently, according to this test, I got 3 out of 20. Apparently, I've been told I do lack a bit of empathy. And I have tried using it in a sentence before, like saying, I empathise with you. but apparently that's not empathy.
Can I suggest you go to Paddy for some lessons?
I will.
Liz and Craig Watson have a personal interest in empathy.
Everyone looks so happy, don't they? It seemed very idyllic, really. I remember just feeling very comfortable with you then. Craig is very calculating. He's very stubborn, incredibly stubborn.
Liz is the opposite of myself. She's almost too fiery, too almost out of control at times.
I don't feel Craig understands me hardly at all. And we've gone out sometimes and Craig's had a book and he's reading the book when we're out. You know, that really upsets me, actually.
To be fair, I probably haven't done that for several years.
You've done it recently. Craig is living the life of a bachelor, actually. And, he's a great bachelor.
Liz and Craig blame each other for their failure to communicate. So in an unusual move, we've asked neurologist Ruben Gurr to examine their brains.
So here is the scanner, and what we will get is an image of your brain anatomy, but more importantly, we'll get images of what parts of the brain become active when you have to solve specific kinds of problems.
A key part of empathy is recognizing how other people feel.
We'll start doing the tests, and the first test is the test of emotion recognition. And you'll have to answer whether the face looks to you like a positive or a negative emotion.
To me, communication is mostly about the non-verbal, not what you actually say, but what you're feeling. And I think Craig's not that in touch with his feelings enough.
Actually, maybe I've got perhaps more sensitivity in that area than I'm given credit for, and vice versa, that Lizzie hasn't got quite as much strength in that area as she gives herself credit for.
Well, that's interesting. I just learnt something else.
If the scan reveals that Liz and Craig read other people's emotion differently, then some of their misunderstandings might be instantly explained.
The part of the brain that deals with emotions is right in the center of the brain, right here. Liz shows a hefty activation, whereas Craig's brain shows no activation at all in this emotional part of the brain.
Not going on.
Whereas you went straight to the emotional part and you say, how would I have felt if I were looking like that? You immediately invoke that emotional part of your brain.
Liz is 40% more accurate than Craig at reading emotion in others because she is using the emotional part of her own brain. And the scans reveal that in this test, Craig shows no emotional response at all.
Liz, are you surprised at Craig's result?
What surprised me most was the fact that it was completely devoid of any emotional response in the centre part of the brain. I mean, that actually has given me a big insight into why I've often felt I wish he would show some emotion.
Yeah, but also switching back, in terms of our relationship, in terms of just our understanding, I sometimes need things to be spelt out more.
Yeah.
You know, actually, don't think I'm just going to take it on telepathically or so. Just, you actually got to tell me. And also, I mean, situations where there's potential conflict and so on, I'm trying to calm things down, actually. I guess I just want to avoid the conflict. Whereas you're more able to, or more willing to sort of embrace.
Well, I just think it's a much more interesting level to operate on if you can get into your emotional response a bit more.
If women assume that men are just like them, and vice versa, that's when you get into difficulties. As far as you're concerned, you're sending out all these signals. It's entirely obvious that you are upset. So then when the bloke doesn't respond, you up the ante some more because you're determined to get the emotional response. You introduce emotive topics, so he has to respond. He can't ignore it. And then what do? You end up hanging a ding-dong.
It's a shame for it to have to degenerate into a row just in order to activate the emotional response.
The only real way forward is to realise we are different, we process this sort of information differently, and how are we going to make that work?
Until recently, scientists were reluctant to acknowledge any sex differences, partly because of history. In 1879, Gustave Le Bon, a founding father of psychology, announced that intelligent women are so rare that they are as exceptional as the birth of any monstrosity, as, for example, of a gorilla with 2 heads. Consequently, we may neglect them entirely. And that, 125 years ago, was medical fact.
If I bring out a male brain and put it next to a female brain, you can see there's very little difference in any of the structures on the surface of the brain. The only difference really between these two is their size. And in general, female brains are a little bit smaller. So the explanation for this is men tend to be bigger, and so this is in proportion to that difference in body size. I don't think anyone's going to suggest that a small man is any less intelligent than a large man. Having said that, there have been a number of studies to suggest that certain areas of the brain might be slightly different in size. And the biggest areas of difference appear to be in language processing and also in this part of the frontal lobe, which is important in visuospatial processing. And this might be the basis for some of the functional differences we see between men and women. They may just be wired up differently.
Dup.
In this test, Tim is listening to made-up words.
Bok.
Different sounds are played to each ear at the same time.
Bub.
But Tim only hears one of them.
Gab.
When Claire listens to the same test, this is what she hears.
Gab and gad.
Because women use both sides of the brain to process speech, Claire can hear both sounds.
Tod and top.
Dod.
But Tim, who as a man only uses the right side of his brain,
Ged,
can only hear one.
Bok. I found it really, really difficult. It almost came over as one word in both ears at the same time.
Things aren't looking very good for men.
That was automatic, by the way.
Object-centred, partially deaf, unempathic, sex-obsessed fantasists is not how most of them would like to be remembered. Men are supposed to be go-getting, thrusting, successful. So we're giving them a chance to shine